Dawn broke quietly over the valley, the kind of pale gold light that softened everything it touched. Frost clung to the grass like memory, and the breath of the land rose in thin, steady ribbons. Elias Ward walked the fence line with his head low, the brim of his hat shadowing eyes worn thin by years of looking at things that no longer changed. His boots sank into the thawing earth. The field stretched wide before him, empty, patient, and waiting for a season that never seemed to come. He carried a coil of wire in one hand and an old hammer in the other. The rhythm of repair was his prayer now. Post to post, nail to nail, each sound steady as a heartbeat. Beyond the pasture, the barn leaned against the wind, gray boards weathered to near silver. Inside it, only silence remained. The horses had been sold long ago, after his wife's sickness took everything that made noise feel like comfort. His son, Thomas, left soon after, promised to write, never did. Scout, the old sheepdog, followed a few steps behind, limping in time with him. The animal was all ribs and loyalty. Elias reached down once to pat its head, the gesture automatic, his voice rough when he muttered, "Still with me, old boy?" The dog wagged once, slow and certain. The sun rose higher, melting the frost, revealing the damage last night's wind had done. A fence post split clean down the middle, wire torn loose. Elias knelt, examining the break. That was when he heard it. A sound out of place, faint and strained, carried from somewhere near the creek. Not the rustle of wind or the creak of wood. Something alive, something hurting. He straightened, listening. There was again a sharp metallic cry, followed by a low, guttural sound like breath pressed against pain. Without thinking, he set the tools down and began walking toward it. The grass grew higher near the creek bed, brittle stalks brushing his legs. The closer he came, the clearer the sound grew, until he could hear the wire's tension singing faintly in the cold air. And then he saw it. A horse, a Mustang, caught in the remains of an old barbed fence, half hidden by weeds. The animal's sides heaved, muscles quivering with exhaustion. Blood streaked its flank where the wire had bitten deep. Its mane was tangled, eyes wide with panic, nostrils flaring white. Every movement sent the fence rattling, the sound harsh and desperate. Elias stopped a few yards away, heart thudding in his chest. Wild horses still roamed the high ridges, but he hadn't seen one this close in years. This one was young, strong, too proud for his own safety. He took a slow breath, and another. "Easy," he said softly, his voice low as a wind. "Don't fight it. You'll tear yourself worse." The Mustang jerked its head, eyes locking onto him. Fear and fury met in that look, a mirror of something old and familiar inside him. Elias raised both hands, palms open, an inch closer. The horse trembled but did not lunge. He crouched near the wire, studying the way it had twisted around the animal's leg and chest. Rust flaked under his fingers. Whoever left this fence here had forgotten it long ago, abandoned metal waiting to wound. He pulled his pocket knife free, its blade dull but steady. "We'll get you out," he murmured. "Just hold still." The horse snorted, shivered. Elias worked carefully, sawing at the wire, his breath fogging the air. Each cut was a risk. The tension could snap back, slice him open, but he kept going, quiet, methodical. The Mustang stilled, maybe from exhaustion, maybe from trust. When the first strand fell loose, Elias paused. Blood welled where the barbs had been. He reached for his coat sleeve, tore a strip from the fabric, and pressed it against the wound. "Almost there," he whispered. The horse's head lowered slightly, a tremor running through it. Elias met his eyes again, dark, defiant, alive. For the first time in years, something stirred in him that wasn't loneliness or duty. It was purpose. He didn't know if he could save it, but he knew he couldn't walk away. Above them, the wind shifted. Clouds gathered over the ridge, the smell of rain sharp on the air. Elias tightened his grip on the knife, took another breath, and whispered, "All right, boy, let's finish this." The horse's breath met his own in the cold between them, and the valley held still, waiting. Rain began before noon, fine and cold, threading through the valley like a whisper that would not quit. Elias worked against it. Shoulders hunched, knife slipping once before finding its hold again. Each strand of wire came loose with a dull twang, the sound of metal surrendering after years of silence. The Mustang stood trembling, its breath harsh and visible, steam rising from his body as if from a forge. When Elias finally cut the last coil from his flank, the horse staggered and nearly fell. He stepped back, giving space, palms open. "Easy now," he said, voice hoarse. "You're free." Freedom didn't come easily. The Mustang took a few unsteady steps, then sank to its knees, sides heaving, blood mixed with rainwater, turning the ground into dark streaks of color. Elias hesitated before kneeling beside it. "Don't give up on me," he muttered, and for a moment, he wasn't talking to the horse at all. He stripped off his coat, draped it over the animal's shoulders, then wiped the mud from its wounds with trembling hands. The smell of wet earth and iron filled the air. The rain deepened, cold enough to sting, but he didn't move. Somewhere inside the barn, Scout barked faintly, but Elias couldn't hear much beyond the horse's uneven breathing. The Mustang's eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion claiming it. Elias pressed a palm to its neck, feeling for the pulse. It was faint but steady. "You're tougher than you look," he whispered. "Reckon we both are." He stayed like that until the rain lightened and gray clouds broke apart into patches of pale sky. By dusk, the horse stirred again, legs shifting against the mud. Elias stood slowly, his knees aching from hours crouched in cold. He watched as the Mustang struggled upright, wobbling but determined. When it finally found balance, it turned its head toward him, ears twitching. He waited for the inevitable flight, a rush of hooves fading into distance, but it didn't come. The horse stood still, watching it with eyes that seemed to carry a question he couldn't name. Elias almost spoke, but the words stayed caught behind his teeth. He reached out once, stopped halfway, then let his hand fall. "Go on," he said quietly. "Ain't nothing holding you now." The horse flicked its tail, took one tentative step, then another. The mud sucked at its hooves as it climbed toward the ridge. At the crest, it paused, rain glinting along its mane like silver threads. It turned its head, just enough for Elias to meet its gaze once more before it disappeared into the thinning mist. The silence that followed was heavier than the storm had been. Elias stood there long after the shape was gone, coat soaked, heart drumming a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. When he finally turned back toward home, the valley looked different, emptier, yet alive in a way he couldn't explain. Inside the house, he found the old lamp on the table and lit it, the flame wavering against glass. The room glowed with a tired warmth. He peeled off his wet shirt and hung it by the stove, poured coffee that had gone lukewarm hours ago, and drank it anyway. Scout lay near the door, watching him with steady eyes. Elias sat beside the dog and let out a long breath. "Still here," he murmured, half to himself. That night, he couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the Mustang's face, the wild in it, the fear, and that final look before it vanished. He thought about the fences still broken, about his son somewhere far away, about how saving something small could feel like saving everything. When the wind shifted near dawn, he swore he heard distant hoofbeats echoing faintly across the valley, soft and certain, as if the horse was reminding him he hadn't dreamed it. Elias smiled into the dark. "You run free now," he said softly. "You earned it." And outside, beneath a sky washed clean, the valley listened. Spring eased into the valley with a quiet persistence, softening the frozen edges of the world Elias had come to accept as permanent. Snowmelt ran down the hillsides, feeding the creek that curved behind the barn. The fences he had mended all winter gleamed faintly with new wire, their straight lines cutting through the greening fields like veins through a living thing. Life had returned in small ways. Sparrows nesting in the rafters, the dog barking at nothing, the grass growing where nothing had dared before. Yet Elias still woke each morning with the same hollow ache, his hands restless for work that never felt done. It had been weeks since he freed the Mustang. At first, he convinced himself the creature had vanished into mountains where wild things belonged. But one morning, while walking the creek, he found a hoof print near the mud bank, sharp, clean, too large to belong to any cattle. He crouched there for a long moment, tracing its edge with one finger. "Well, I'll be," he whispered. From then on, the signs came often. Tracks by the water trough, tufts of dark hair caught on fence posts, even an apple missing from the windowsill where he'd left it to ripen. He never saw the horse outright, but he began to feel its presence in the rhythm of his days, like a song playing faintly from another room. He started leaving offerings, half a bale of hay near the gate, a pail of water under the oak tree. Each time, the gifts disappeared by morning. He didn't tell himself stories about it. He simply accepted it the way one accepts the wind. Something wild had chosen to linger near him, and that was enough. Scout seemed to sense it too. The old dog, once listless, now patrolled the yard with quiet purpose, ears pricking toward the hills each dusk. Sometimes Elias followed his gaze and thought he saw movement near the ridge, a flicker of dark against the light. But it always vanished before he could be sure. One evening, near sunset, Elias was repairing a broken latch on the paddock gate when he heard soft hoofbeats behind him. He froze, every muscle tensing. Slowly he turned. The Mustang stood at the far edge of the field, still and unhurried. Its coat gleamed bronze in the dying light, scars faint but visible. The animal looked stronger now, fuller, the raw edges of its suffering smoothed by time. They regarded each other across the distance, two shapes framed by the long shadow of the setting sun. Elias removed his hat, his breath catching. He didn't call out, didn't move closer. The horse shifted its weight, snorted softly, and lowered its head to graze. It was not fear or flight that held it there, but choice. The simplicity of that truth struck Elias deeper than any word could. He felt something loosen inside him, the tight coil that had bound him since the day his family's voices fell silent. That night, he sat on the porch with Scout at his feet, the lantern casting a pool of warm light. The Mustang's outline lingered in his mind, proud, free, untamed. He reached for the notebook he hadn't touched in months and wrote a single line. Some things come back, even when you stop waiting for them. Days passed gently after that. The valley bloomed. The old wounds in the land, and in him, seemed to heal together. One morning, a letter arrived from his son, creased, dirt-streaked, real. Thomas wrote of a child just born, a boy named after his grandfather. He wanted a visit come summer. Elias read it twice, his hands trembling, then looked toward the hills where the Mustang had stood. The wind carried the faint smell of rain and grass. "Guess we both get second chances," he murmured, smiling into the open air. Far off, beyond the fence, a shadow moved and paused as if listening. Then the valley grew still again, holding its breath for whatever came next. Summer settled gently over the valley, the kind of season that carried no sharp edges, only warmth that seeped into the bones. The field shimmered gold beneath the sun, fences straight and sure, the creek full and humming. Elias moved slower now, his days measured by the rhythm of chores and the laughter of voices that no longer belonged only to memory. His son had returned, just as the letter promised, bringing with him a young wife and a baby who gripped Elias's finger as though claiming a piece of his heart. The ranch, once a place of silence, now breathed again. In the evenings, they gathered on the porch. Thomas told stories about the city. The wife hummed lullabies under her breath, and Elias watched the baby sleep, the lantern light soft against his tiny face. Scout lay by the steps, tail thumping lazily. Everything felt fragile in its beauty, as if the valley itself understood it had been granted a reprieve. Yet even in that peace, Elias found himself looking toward the hills, half expecting to see a flash of bronze in the distance. The Mustang had not returned in weeks. One morning before dawn, he woke without reason. The air was cool, the world still. Something pulled him outside. He followed the faint scent of dew and clover down to the pasture. Mist drifted low across the grass, and in it, a shape emerged, quiet, solid, waiting. The Mustang stood by the creek, head lifted, coat glinting faintly in the gray light. Elias stopped a few yards away, heart tight in his chest. The horse looked different now, fuller, confident, carrying the strength of wild places in every line of its body. For a long time neither moved. The only sound was the slow pulse of the water and the whisper of leaves stirring awake. Elias removed his hat, the gesture instinctive, reverent. "You made it through," he said softly. "Knew you would." The Mustang stepped forward once, then paused. Its breath came in slow, even waves, the same rhythm as his own. Elias wanted to reach out, to feel the warmth of that living strength again. But something deeper told him this moment wasn't for holding. It was for letting go. He stood still, hands at his sides, and let the quiet say everything words could not. Behind him, the first light touched the horizon, turning the mist gold. The horse's eyes caught the glow, 2 mirrors of dawn. It gave a small shake of its mane, as though to signal the end of something shared, and turned toward the open hills. Elias watched it go. The movement was effortless, each stride sure, silent, proud. The figure grew smaller against the brightness, until it was only a shadow swallowed by sunlight. A lump rose in his throat, but he didn't fight it. He let the tears fall freely, unashamed. "Run far, boy," he whispered. "Don't you ever look back." When he finally turned home, the sun was climbing higher, burning away what remained of the mist. On the porch, Thomas was rocking the baby, and laughter drifted faintly through the morning air. Life waited for him there, warm and unguarded. Yet as he walked, he carried with him the image of the Mustang vanishing into freedom. A creature once bound by pain, now whole again. At the fence line, he paused, resting a hand on the worn post. The air smelled of wildflowers and rain, and for the first time in years, he felt the valley breathe with him. "Thank you," he said quietly, unsure if the words were meant for the horse, the land, or the life that had found its way back to him. The wind stirred the grass in answer, a sound like hooves in the distance. Steady, sure, fading. Sometimes, he thought, goodbye isn't loss at all. It's the moment you realize something you freed has set you free, too.